The young recruits stood in formation at Fort Bragg's training compound, sweat dripping down their faces under the North Carolina sun. A battered pickup truck pulled into the lot, and out stepped an older man, white-haired, white-bearded, wearing a faded red jacket over a plain t-shirt. His face was weathered, serious, sad even. He moved slowly toward the training facility, carrying a worn duffel bag. One recruit, a cocky 20-year-old named Jake, elbowed his buddy and whispered loud enough for others to hear, "Looks like Grandpa missed the turn to the retirement home." Laughter rippled through the formation. The old man heard it. His expression didn't change. He just kept walking, his eyes fixed straight ahead, that same somber look on his face. But something about the way he carried himself, the straightness of his back despite his age, suggested there was more to this man than met the eye. If you believe respect should be earned through actions, not assumptions, stay with this story. The recruits had been waiting for their new combat tactics instructor for weeks. Their previous instructor had been reassigned, and rumours swirled about who would replace him. They expected someone young, sharp, maybe fresh from deployment with stories of recent operations. Instead, they got this elderly man who looked like he should be playing checkers at a senior centre, not teaching soldiers how to fight. The base commander had mentioned only that their new instructor had extensive field experience, but that description seemed laughable now. As the old man approached the training office, another recruit muttered, "They're really scraping the bottom of the barrel these days." More snickers followed. The man in the red jacket paused at the door, his hand on the handle. For a moment, it seemed like he might turn around and address the disrespect, but he didn't. He simply opened the door and disappeared inside, leaving the recruits to their assumptions and their arrogance. Inside the administrative building, Sergeant Morrison was processing paperwork when the old man entered. Morrison looked up, saw the civilian clothes and the age, and immediately assumed this was someone lost or looking for directions to the VA office. "Can I help you, sir? If you're looking for veteran services, that's building 12 across the way." The old man set his duffel down gently. "I'm here to report as the new combat tactics instructor. I was told to check in with base operations." Morrison's eyebrows shot up. He glanced down at his roster, then back at the man. You're Instructor Harrison?" The old man nodded once, his face still carrying that serious, sad expression. Morrison's professional demeanour kicked in, though confusion flickered in his eyes. "Right, yes, sir. I'll need to see your credentials and process your base access." As Harrison pulled out his documents, Morrison couldn't help but wonder what kind of mistake had been made in assignment. This man looked like he belonged in a rocking chair, not in front of elite soldiers. The credentials checked out, though Morrison noticed they were oddly sparse on recent details. There were gaps in the service record he could see. Sections marked classified or redacted. Harrison's military ID was current, his clearances active, but something about the file felt incomplete, like reading a book with half the pages missing. "Everything seems in order," Morrison said, trying to hide his skepticism. "Your first session with the recruits is scheduled for 1400 hours. That's in about 30 minutes. Harrison simply nodded. "Where's the training ground?" Morrison gave him directions, then watched as the old man picked up his duffel and walked out. The sergeant shook his head. Those recruits were going to eat this guy alive. He'd seen it before. Older instructors who couldn't keep up, who got steamrolled by cocky young soldiers who thought they knew everything. He almost felt sorry for Harrison. Almost. At 1400 hours, the recruits assembled at the outdoor training ground. The sun blazed overhead, and the temperature pushed 90 degrees. They stood in loose formation, talking among themselves, laughing, confident. When Harrison appeared, walking slowly across the field in that same red jacket, the chatter grew louder. "No way that's our instructor," someone said. "This has to be a joke," another added. Jake, the same recruit who'd made the retirement home comment, stepped forward slightly. "Sir, are you lost? The bingo hall is in town." The laughter was louder now, more open. Harrison stopped about 10 feet from the formation. He set down his duffel. His face remained unchanged, sad, serious, weathered. He didn't smile, he didn't frown. He just looked at them with eyes that had seen things these young men couldn't imagine. "I'm your new combat tactics instructor," he said quietly. His voice was soft but clear. "For the next 12 weeks, I'll be teaching you how to stay alive in situations where most men die." The recruits exchanged glances. Some rolled their eyes. Jake crossed his arms. "With all due respect, sir, what exactly qualifies you to teach us?" Most of us just came back from advanced infantry training. We've trained with rangers, with special forces. No offence, but you look like you should be teaching us how to use a walker." More laughter. Harrison's expression didn't change. He reached into his duffel and pulled out a simple rope. "Who here thinks they can tie a proper quick-release tactical knot?" Every hand went up. "You?" Harrison pointed at Jake. "Show me." Jake swaggered forward, took the rope and tied what he thought was a perfect knot. Harrison examined it for exactly 2 seconds. "That knot would get you killed in a hostage extraction. It's too slow to release under pressure, and it'll tighten under body weight." He undid it and retied it in a blur of motion, his old hands moving with surprising speed and precision. "This is how you do it. Watch closely because I won't repeat it." He demonstrated again, slower this time. The recruits watched, some with grudging interest, others still skeptical. For the next hour, Harrison put them through basic drills. Nothing fancy, nothing dramatic, just fundamentals. But as he moved among them, correcting stances, adjusting grips, demonstrating techniques, something strange happened. His corrections were always right. His demonstrations, though performed slowly due to his age, showed a level of technical perfection that was undeniable. When one recruit challenged him on a disarming technique, Harrison had the young man on the ground in less than 2 seconds, the recruit's training rifle in Harrison's hands before anyone could blink. The old man helped him up without a word, handed back the rifle and continued teaching. The laughter had stopped, but the respect hadn't arrived. The recruits saw skill, yes, but they attributed it to outdated training, old-school methods that might have worked in Vietnam or the Gulf War but had no place in modern combat. They complied with his instructions, but without enthusiasm, without real attention. Harrison noticed. He said nothing. He just kept teaching, his face maintaining that same sad, serious expression. The session ended at 1600 hours. The recruits dispersed, heading to the mess hall, still talking among themselves. "He knows some stuff, I'll give him that," one said. "But he's still ancient," Jake replied. "I bet he hasn't seen real action in 30 years. Probably spent his whole career behind a desk." They had no idea how wrong they were. As Harrison packed up his equipment, he noticed a black SUV pulling up to the training ground. The vehicle had government plates and tinted windows. The door opened, and out stepped a man in an immaculate army dress uniform, stars gleaming on his shoulders. It was Major General Robert Kane, the base commander, a man whose reputation preceded him. Tough, demanding, and not given to social visits. Harrison straightened slightly but didn't salute. He was technically a civilian contractor now. The general approached, and his face broke into something rare, a genuine smile. "Tom Harrison," he said, extending his hand. "It's been too long." They shook hands firmly, and there was real warmth in the gesture. 15 years, Harrison replied, his voice still quiet. 15 years since Kandahar? The general nodded, his expression growing serious. "I heard you'd finally agreed to come out of retirement to teach. I had to see it with my own eyes. When they told me you were here, I cleared my schedule." A few recruits who hadn't yet left the area noticed the general's arrival. They stopped, watching from a distance. Why was the base commander personally greeting their instructor? And why was he treating this old man like an equal, like a friend? "How are the recruits treating you?" the general asked. Harrison's sad expression didn't change. "Like an old man who doesn't belong here." General Kane's jaw tightened. "They don't know." It wasn't a question. "No reason they should," Harrison said. "I'm just here to teach them what I know. The rest doesn't matter." The general shook his head slowly. "It matters, Tom. It always matters. These kids need to understand who they're learning from." The general raised his voice, projecting across the training ground. "All personnel within earshot, formation now." The remaining recruits scrambled into formation, joined quickly by others who heard the command. Within 2 minutes, nearly 40 soldiers stood at attention. Sergeant Morrison appeared as well, curious about the commotion. General Caney stood beside Harrison, his posture rigid, official. "I want to introduce you to your instructor, since it seems proper introductions weren't made. This is Thomas Harrison. Some of you have been disrespectful. You've made jokes. You've questioned his qualifications." The recruit shifted uncomfortably. Jake's face had gone pale. "Let me tell you who Thomas Harrison is. He's a man who spent 32 years in special operations. He's a man who completed more than 200 classified missions across 4 continents. He's a man who single-handedly held a position in Mogadishu for 18 hours against overwhelming enemy forces, saving an entire platoon. He's a man who trained 3 generations of Special Forces operators, many of whom are now leading their own units. The general's voice grew harder, more intense. Thomas Harrison was awarded 3 Silver Stars, 2 Bronze Stars with Valor, and the Distinguished Service Cross. He was recommended for the Medal of Honor twice, but both times the missions were too classified for public recognition. He's forgotten more about combat than most career soldiers will ever learn, and he's standing here, in his 70s, because he believes in passing on what he knows to the next generation. Because despite everything he's sacrificed, despite the scars he carries both visible and invisible, he still believes in the mission. He still believes in you. The silence was absolute. You could have heard a pin drop on the dusty training ground. Every recruit stood frozen, faces drained of colour. Jake looked like he might be sick. The general continued. When I was a captain, barely older than you are now, I served under then Major Harrison in Afghanistan. We were ambushed during a reconnaissance mission. Our convoy was destroyed. Half my men were wounded. We were pinned down in a valley with no air support, no reinforcements, and enemies on 3 sides. Harrison took command. He was calm, methodical, precise. He organised our defence, treated the wounded, and planned our extraction, all while under constant fire. When our ammunition ran low, he volunteered to cross 200 metres of open ground to reach a destroyed vehicle that still had supplies. He made that run 3 times. 3 times through machine gun fire and mortar rounds. He brought back ammunition, medical supplies, and a working radio. Because of him, all of us made it out alive. Because of Thomas Harrison, I'm standing here today. Because of him, I got to go home to my wife and meet my daughter for the first time. The general's voice cracked slightly with emotion. So when I heard that some recruits were making jokes about retirement homes, that they were disrespecting this man, I felt it was my duty to set the record straight. You don't have to like him, you don't have to be his friend, but you will respect him. You will listen to him, and you will be grateful for every single lesson he's willing to share, because those lessons were bought with blood and sacrifice that you cannot begin to comprehend. General Kane turned to Harrison and did something that made every recruit's spine stiffen. He saluted, a full, crisp, formal salute from a 2-star general to a civilian instructor. Harrison, after a moment's hesitation, returned it. The general held the salute for a long moment, then dropped his hand. It's an honour to have you here, Tom. These soldiers are lucky to learn from you. Harrison's expression finally shifted just slightly. Not quite a smile, but a softening around the eyes. Thank you, Robert. That wasn't necessary. The general shook his head. Yes, it was. They needed to know. They deserved to know. He turned back to the formation. Dismissed, and I expect everyone here tomorrow at 1400 hours, ready to learn, ready to listen, and ready to show the respect that Instructor Harrison has earned 1,000 times over. The recruits saluted and dispersed, but this time there was no chatter, no jokes. They walked in silence, processing what they'd just heard. Jake approached Harrison as the old man was packing his duffel. The young recruit's face was red, his eyes downcast. Sir, I owe you an apology. What I said earlier, the retirement home comment, the disrespect, there's no excuse for it. I was ignorant and arrogant, and I'm sorry. Harrison looked at him with those sad, serious eyes. You didn't know. Most people don't. I don't wear my past on my sleeve because it's not about me. It's about the mission, about the knowledge, about keeping the next generation alive. Jake nodded, struggling to find words. Why didn't you say something? Why didn't you put us in our place right away? Harrison was quiet for a moment. Because respect that's demanded isn't real respect. Respect that's earned through action, through demonstration, through time. That's the kind that matters. I was going to earn yours eventually one way or another. The general just accelerated the timeline. He shouldered his duffel. See you tomorrow, 1400 hours. And son, bring a notebook. We're going to cover advanced tactical movement, and you'll want to remember every detail. Over the following weeks, the training ground transformed. The recruits arrived early, stayed late, hung on Harrison's every word. His teaching style didn't change. He remained quiet, serious, methodical. But now they understood that every technique he showed them, every correction he made, every story he told came from real experience, from actual life and death situations. They learned that the sad expression on his face wasn't weakness or depression, but the weight of memories, of brothers lost, of close calls survived, of a lifetime spent in the shadows doing things that could never be fully acknowledged. They learned that the red jacket he always wore had belonged to his best friend, a fellow operator who died saving Harrison's life in Iraq. They learned that true strength isn't about being loud or flashy, it's about being competent, reliable, and willing to pass on what you know. Harrison never mentioned the incident again. He didn't need to. The transformation in the recruit spoke for itself. They graduated 12 weeks later as one of the highest performing classes in the base's history. At the ceremony, General Caney presented Harrison with a commendation for exceptional instruction. The old man accepted it with a simple nod, his face still serious, still sad, but his eyes showing quiet satisfaction. Jake, who'd made that first cruel joke, had become one of Harrison's most dedicated students. He approached the instructor after the ceremony. "Sir, I just want you to know you changed how I see everything. Not just combat tactics, but respect, humility, judgment. I'll carry what you taught us for the rest of my career." Harrison finally allowed himself a small smile. "Then my work here was worth it. Stay safe out there, soldier. Remember what you learned, and come home alive." They shook hands, and in that moment, the young recruit understood something profound about honour, about service, and about the quiet heroes who walk among us unrecognized.